The air in my parents' living room was thick with the scent of expensive sandalwood and the sharp, metallic temps of unexpressed resentment. I am Clara, a 35-year-old senior systems architect. My entire professional life is dedicated to the study of logic, the mapping of dependencies, and the hardening of infrastructures against failure. I build systems that are designed to withstand catastrophic pressure. I understand that a single weak link, if left unaddressed, will eventually bring down the entire cathedral. For 35 years, I had been the designated weak link of the Vance family, the difficult daughter, the cold child, the one whose achievements were always framed as accidents while my flaws were analyzed as character traits. I sat on the edge of the velvet armchair, my back as straight as a structural beam. Across from me sat my mother, Evelyn, and my younger sister, Seraphina. Seraphina was the golden child, a woman whose life was a choreographed performance of grace and charm, funded entirely by the family's collective success. In reality, that success was a carefully maintained illusion built on the back of my silent labor. "You're being rigid again, Clara," Evelyn said, her voice a polished blade of disappointment. She didn't look at me. She was busy adjusting Seraphina's diamond tennis bracelet apiece. I had bought for my sister's 30th birthday as a peace offering that was never acknowledged. Seraphina is trying to launch her lifestyle brand, and she needs the capital from the ancestral estate sale. It's only fair. You have your high-rise condo and your tech friends. You don't need the legacy. The ancestral estate was a dilapidated farmhouse until I spent $400,000 and 3 years of my life renovating it, I said, my voice low and controlled. I didn't just provide the capital. I managed the contractors. I designed the solar integration, and I saved it from a tax lien that Dad left behind. It's not a legacy you're selling, Mom, it's my equity. Oh, don't be so clinical. Seraphina laughed, a tinkling, superficial sound that had grated on my nerves since we were toddlers. You always make everything about numbers and contracts. It's so unrefined. Family isn't a spreadsheet, Clara. We're doing this for the future of the Vance name. My brand will put us back on the map. You're just the architect. I'm the vision. This had been the narrative of my childhood. If I won a science fair, it was because I was socially stunted and had nothing better to do. If Seraphina passed a remedial art class, she was a genius of the soul. When I worked 3 jobs to put myself through MIT, I was obsessive. When Seraphina spent her 20s traveling to find herself on my dime, she was spiritually adventurous. The verbal abuse was never loud. It was a constant, low-level radiation of dismissal. I was the gray child, the one expected to provide the foundation so the others could dance on the roof. We've already signed the intent to sell, Evelyn said, smoothing her skirt. We didn't think you'd mind. After all, you've always been so independent. We assumed you'd be happy to see your sister finally come into her own. The closing is in 2 weeks. We'll need you to vacate the guest house by Friday. I looked at them, 2 women who had never known the weight of a mortgage, the stress of a deadline, or the reality of a bank balance that wasn't supplemented by my boring tech salary. They had treated me like a utility, a power grid that was expected to run indefinitely without maintenance or recognition. I see, I said, standing up. My heart was pounding, but my mind was beginning to run a high-level diagnostic of the situation. Good, Evelyn said, finally looking at me with a thin, triumphant smile. I'm glad we could handle this like adults. We'll send you the paperwork for the small consultation fee we VA set aside for your help with the renovations. I walked out of the house, the sound of their laughter following me like a ghost. I didn't go to my guest house. I went to my car, opened my laptop, and began a deep dive into the intent to sell documents they had so carelessly mentioned. As a systems architect, I don't just build things, I secure them. Years ago, when my father was alive and the farmhouse was falling into the earth, I had agreed to fund the restoration only if the property was placed into a multi-tiered corporate trust. My mother and sister were the beneficiaries, which gave them the right to live there and enjoy the aesthetics. But I was the trustee and the primary creditor. They had signed an intent to sell a property that they had no legal right to liquidate without my notarized consent. But more importantly, they had forgotten about the maintenance clawback clause I had embedded in the trust's bylaws, a failsafe designed for exactly this kind of betrayal. I looked at the Seraphine's brand filings. She had already taken out significant high-interest loans against her expected inheritance from the sale of the house. She had spent money she didn't have, guaranteed by a house she didn't own. They thought I was a component they could swap out. They forgot that I am the operating system. I began the decommissioning protocol. I didn't just freeze the sale, I initiated a formal audit of usage. For 10 years, I had paid the property taxes. the insurance, the landscaping, and the utilities for the main house where they lived. Under the trust's rules, these were reimbursable expenses that could be called in at any time if the beneficiaries attempted to breach the trust's integrity. The total amount owed to me, with interest, exceeded the total value of the estate. I sat in the dark interior of my car, the blue light of the screen reflecting the cold, hard logic of my next move. They wanted to sell the legacy. Fine. I would give them exactly what they asked for, but the Vance name was about to undergo a massive structural reorganization. I sent a single, encrypted file to the real estate attorney handling the sale. It wasn't a protest. It was an invoice, and it was followed by a notice of foreclosure initiated by the trustee. My hands rested on the steering wheel, the leather cold against my palms as I watched the silhouette of the farmhouse through the windshield. She is my mother. She is the woman who tucked me in with a sigh, the one who looked through me at every graduation, the one who made me feel like an interloper in my own home. She is my sister. She is the girl I protected from every playground bully, the one I shared my lunch with, the one I spent my adulthood trying to buy a smile from. We are the same blood, a singular, broken unit. My stomach knotted into a hard, frigid lump. Hot tears finally broke and burned tracks down my cheeks, and my breath caught in a sharp, jagged sob. How can I do this to them? How can I be the one to serve an eviction notice to my own mother? How can I dismantle my sister's only dream, no matter how delusional it is? But they stood in that house, a house I rebuilt with my own blood and sweat, and called me a consultant. They treated my life's work like a scrap of paper to be tossed into a fire for a moment's warmth. They bet on my silence because they mistook my resilience for submission. They struck first. I had no choice. I wiped the moisture from my face with a sharp, aggressive motion. The gray child was dead. The architect had taken the controls. I didn't wait for the morning. I drove to my high-rise condo, my mind running 1,000 lines of logic a second. When I arrived, I opened my master workstation, the one with the encrypted uplink to my firm's legal servers. I wasn't just filing an invoice. I was executing a hostile liquidation of trust assets. The first move was a notice of lis pendens. By filing this against the property, I effectively locked the title. No bank in the world would touch a sale with a pending legal dispute over ownership. The intent to sell my mother and sister had signed became a worthless piece of paper. But that was only the perimeter defense. I needed to move into the core. I pulled the records for Seraphina's brand, Vance Vision. As I suspected, she had used the farmhouse as collateral for a $250,000 bridge loan from a private equity firm that specialized in high-risk, high-interest lending. She had signed a declaration claiming she was the 100% equitable owner of the property. That wasn't just a mistake. It was loan fraud. I spent the next 4 hours drafting a formal declaratory judgment request. I included every receipt from the last 10 years, the $80,000 roof, the $120,000 foundation stabilization, the $40,000 in back taxes I'd paid when my father died. I mapped out the trust's bylaws, highlighting the clawback provision in bright, undeniable red. By 9 a.m., I wasn't just the trustee. I was a secured creditor with a lien that dwarfed the market value of the home. The first explosion happened at noon. My phone began to vibrate incessantly on my desk. It was Seraphina. I let it go to voicemail. Then my mother. I let that go too. Finally, at 1 p.m., I received a frantic, misspelled text from my sister. The bank just froze my business account. They said the collateral is contested. Clara, what did you do? Call me now. I didn't call. I sent a courier. The courier arrived at the farmhouse at 2:30 p.m., with a leather-bound folder. Inside wasn't a letter of apology or a plea for reconciliation. It was a demand for immediate reimbursement of trust expenses. I gave them 48 hours to produce $612,000. Or I would exercise my right as trustee to take physical possession of the property and liquidate the interior assets, including the designer furniture and jewelry I had purchased for them to satisfy the debt. At 4:00 p.m., I heard a pounding at my condo door. I checked the security feed. It was both of them. My mother looked disheveled, her perfect hair coming loose, and Seraphina was wearing a coat I'd bought her last winter, her face twisted in an ugly, panicked mask. I opened the door, but I didn't invite them in. I stood in the threshold, a living barrier. How could you? My mother hissed, her voice trembling not with sadness, but with the fury of a queen being toppled. To treat your own mother like a tenant. To sue your sister for the money you gave us as gifts. They weren't gifts, Mom, I said, my voice as calm and steady as a heartbeat. They were investments in a family I thought existed. But since you've made it clear that I am an outsider and a consultant, I'm simply settling the accounts. A consultant doesn't work for free, and a trustee doesn't allow beneficiaries to commit bank fraud using trust assets. You're ruining me, Seraphina screamed, stepping toward me. The lenders are calling. They're talking about legal proceedings. I'll lose everything. My brand, my reputation. I'll have nothing. You already have nothing, Seraphina, I said, looking her in the eye. You built a vision on a foundation of lies and my money. You wanted to be the visionary. Well, a visionary should have seen this coming. You can't sell what you don't own. We'll fight you, my mother threatened, her eyes narrowing. We'll tell everyone what a cold, heartless creature you are. No one will ever speak to you again. Go ahead, I replied. Tell them I paid your bills for a decade. Tell them I saved your home from the state. Tell them I'm the reason you have shoes on your feet. And then show them the audit. See who they think is heartless then. I closed the door. The fallout was a slow-motion demolition. Because the collateral was fraudulent, Seraphina's business loan was called in immediately. She had already spent most of it on marketing and influence, so she had no way to pay it back. She had to file for personal bankruptcy before her brand even launched a single product. My mother, realizing that fighting a systems architect in court was like trying to outcalculate a supercomputer, finally folded. I didn't kick them out onto the street time, not them. But I did execute the decommissioning. I sold the farmhouse. I took the $800,000 from the sale, reimbursed myself for every cent of the $612,000 debt, and put the remaining balance into a restricted annuity for my mother. It pays her enough for a modest 2-bedroom apartment and basic groceries. She cannot touch the principal, and she cannot gift a single cent of it to Seraphina had to get a real job. She is currently working as a junior sales associate at a department store, the kind of place she used to sneer at. She lives in a studio apartment and takes the bus. I don't visit, I don't answer the guilt-tripping emails. I spent my last Thanksgiving at a quiet resort in the mountains, surrounded by people who don't know my name and don't expect me to fix their lives. I looked at my bank statement. Then I looked at the sunset. For the first time, the numbers balanced perfectly. Now I live in peace and they finally learned their lesson.